When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people.
I wouldn't assume too much, I guess, but really the bigger problem is, what's the bigger problem, Michael? Democrats. Democrats is the correct answer. Bigger problem. What's a bigger threat to America? Venezuelan gangs taking over New York and Chicago, which is happening, or the Democrats that hand over your daughters and your homes to the Venezuelan gangs who are marrying up with MS-13 because the Democrats are making everything better. Depending on what those words mean. You know. Well, happy Thursday and welcome back. CPAC is going on. You know, Conservative Political Action Committee, and their annual conference at the Gaylord Hotel, just outside of Washington, D.C., south of Washington on the mighty Potomac River. They have a big Ferris wheel there. Got a big old Ferris wheel. Lights up at night. Kind of fun. We're up here at the Straight Lord in Washington, D.C., and it's a different sort of thing. Not doing the show from CPAC today for a variety of reasons, but here safely ensconced in our comfortable studio in Northwest Washington, D.C., and I didn't see any Venezuelan gangs on the way in, but I could have missed one or two. Because, you know, Democrats. We are, of course, at 888-630-9625. 888-630-9625 is the telephone number here. And we have a great many amazing news stories for you. Joe Biden is saying he's been lying to us. Just lying and lying like a communist, like a Soviet communist. And about, hey, I can't use the Congress has to act if we're going to do anything about the border. I can't do anything about the border unilaterally like I did when I first came into office in undoing everything that Donald Trump had done to secure our border. And then he undid everything that President Trump did, and he did it by executive order, kind of like that student debt thing that the Supreme Court said he couldn't do, and now he's doing it again because he's a Democrat. And, you know, they're a lot like, what is it? They're like communists. I think that's the word of the week, isn't it? Communists, because the Democrats trotted that one out. The conservative Christian Speaker of the House is now a communist, if you watch MSDNC, because there's a lot of mental illness on the loose out there. Remarkable stuff. But now we learn that Joe Biden is looking at using executive orders, and he may not announce anything publicly. There's a trial balloon right now to see how crazy the left goes, because they are here to destroy America as we know it. But Joe Biden is saying, well, I can just use executive orders to secure our border. Hey, no kidding, stupid. Who's been saying that for 3 years? And what names have you been calling the people that have been telling the truth? The lie wins today because of a corrupt news media. The news media, the most corrupt institution in the United States of America. But Joe Biden may now use executive orders to secure our border. He doesn't mean it. He doesn't feel it. It's a big lie. But what was the interview this morning? The Mexican ambassador talking to Senator Tuberville and saying, oh, yeah, you guys have no idea what's coming. The Mexican ambassador saying, you guys have no idea what's coming. There are people flooding into Mexico. We can't stop them, says the Mexican ambassador to a U.S. senator, says we can't stop them. And they're headed your way because they know there's going to be a change in administrations. So they've got to flood into the United States now like never before. Like never before. The number of Chinese spilling across our southern border, they're coming into California now because Texas has tightened things up over the objections of the Biden administration, because the Biden administration is pro-cartel. You know, the Cali cartel, the Sinaloa cartel, they like all the cartels, and the cartels certainly like the Biden administration. They're making billions, I say. And the Democrats are on the side of Hamas and not the Jews. They hate the Jews. They've made Jew-hating fashionable. It's remarkable. In fact, we have a story for you today. A nice woman who was invited. She's an inspirational speaker, a public speaker, invited to a women's event and a feminist event, and they uninvited her because she's a Jew. And the Democrats these days, they're not for the Jews. Turned out she served in the Israeli Defense Force, and they can't have that at their gathering, so they canceled her because the Democrats have made fascism fashionable. They should have a T-shirt about it. You know, that Democrat, like a Joe Biden campaign T-shirt, make fascism fashionable again, because the anti-Semitism has been mainstreamed in a huge way, in a giant way, gigantic. We also learned that Joe Biden's dog, Commander, he's not a good dog owner. It's not the dog's fault. It's a beautiful dog, a German Shepherd. And Commander has bit at least 24 Secret Service personnel alone. And they're the ones keeping track. Now, the White House staff, passers-by, space aliens, illegal aliens, nobody knows how many other people Commander bit. It's a militaristic name, isn't it? Don't you think that the Commander, and what's the other one? Major. How militaristic. You know, it was a nod to the military-industrial complex, since he's sending trillions their way. But, for the never-ending war in Ukraine, for which no one is calling for a ceasefire, because it turns out it's just white people. You got white Ukrainians, you got white Russians, or Russians that are white, and therefore there's no, the left is fine with it. The Palestinian so-called Hamas, they're very concerned about. They're very concerned about the safety of Hamas, genocidal death cult that they are. So we got that going on. But Commander bit at least 24 people. Now the reality is, anybody who's ever owned a pit bull or a Belgian Malinois, who owns a Belgian Malinois, honestly? But if your dog bites somebody, usually the cops come and go away with your dog, and they subject your dog to psychological testing, and then they may have to shoot it in the head and kill it, because usually that's just lethal injection, which the Democrats oppose also on people. And if they're murderers, they love murderers. But, if your dog bites one person, your dog is in trouble. If your dog bites 3 people, say over the course of a year, your dog is toast. Your dog is getting the death penalty. Honestly, it's Ethel Rosenberg, your dog. I always love the imagery of Ethel Rosenberg in the electric chair, for being a traitor to the United States, and the ghastly plume of smoke rising from her head, according to a witness. But they kill your dog. Joe Biden's dog can bite 24 federal law enforcement officers, and they give him a biscuit because the Democrats hate the police. That's it. Even Jake Tapper, who is just a Democrat Party mouthpiece on a cable channel, and a former Democrat Party Capitol Hill staffer, and a convicted Monica Lewinsky dater. Jake Tapper says the dog has to go. The dog has to go. And see, that's these are the kind of people they listen to at the White House. Not 100 million Americans about illegal aliens flooding our country and changing the nature of our entire country and our cities and all of that. Never mind that. I have the mayor of El Cajon, California. El Cajones? No, just one. Just El Cajon, California. And he was on the television this morning talking about what's going on. He's close to San Diego, east of San Diego, and he's going to the border, and he's going to share with you what he has witnessed and what's going on, because the Democrat Party is just not on our side. They're really not on our side. And speaking of the jihad and how Democrats love the jihad, they're concerned about the jihadi vote in Michigan and Minnesota in particular. Michigan, key swing state for them. You got to have the jihad vote. So they're sucking up to the jihad. Joe Biden is headed up to Michigan, and he's going to wear a Palestinian headdress, Palestinian kafir, and carry an AK-47 at the rally. He's going to pump an AK-47 in the air, wear his Palestinian headdress when he goes to Michigan to campaign, because they hate the Jews. Reminds me of that Tom Lehrer song. Remember that? Maybe we should play a little of that today, because that's pretty funny. And it's about the Democrats. because they're not on anybody's side. Now, James Biden is Joe Biden's brother, and he testified on Capitol Hill yesterday about the Biden family corruption. And he lied, because what else are you going to do? If he told the truth, they'd all be in handcuffs. So he's got to lie, naturally. And lying under oath used to be frowned upon in Washington, D.C. Now it's fine, honestly. Who started that? Maybe James Clapper or Lois Lerner, FBI Director Christopher Wray, CIA Director John Brennan, Communist Party voting CIA Director, then CIA Director John. They all lie under oath on Capitol Hill, and it's fine. There are no consequences for that because, Congress doesn't really get the job done so much of the time. But Biden's brother testifies to House Oversight Committee that the President of the United States has never had any involvement, that's what he said, in any of his business dealings. We already know that to be a lie because of the emails and Hunter Biden's laptop, which you may remember the FBI lied about, the CIA lied about. They all lied about it. They, the corrupt federal government, the permanent bureaucracy, they lied and they lied. Just amazing. And Joe Biden couldn't do anything about the border by executive order, but now he's going to because politics. And forget the Jews. What about the jihad vote? He's got to lock up the jihad vote. Amazing stuff. Yes, sir. So we'll get into a bunch of that stuff. Lots of good stuff. And now so many amazing stories. The FBI had this trusted confidential informant in Ukraine for well over a decade, to whom they paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And because he provided information and they trusted him for a decade. And then he provided information from his sources in Ukraine and at Burisma that Joe Biden was paid $5 million and Hunter Biden was paid $5 million, separate and aside from Hunter Biden's millions of dollars to be on the board of the gas company Burisma without having to do anything, the no-show multi-million-dollar job. And his buddy Devin Archer, too, who has now been convicted of fleecing a Native American tribe for tens of millions of dollars. But it's all okay because their name isn't Trump. It's all fine. Amazing stuff. But now they've arrested and jailed the trusted, highly paid, highly compensated FBI confidential informant who was in good standing for years and years until he said something about the Biden family being crooked, and now he's in handcuffs and in jail, and they trotted him out, and his head was covered in a black hood. He looked like he was with Black September attacking the Olympic Village. Honestly, because if what was the line that Joe Biden used? I can't use the whole thing here. Nobody beeps with a Biden, right? Nobody beeps with a Biden because they unleash the Justice Department on you and the FBI and the filthy, rotten intelligence community, which has been corrupted by the left. And it's a terrible thing. How a trusted FBI source became the center of a Washington scandal, CNN types, on behalf of their party, the Democratic Party. Just amazing. And the Washington Post, I have my Washington Post today. I have it right here. See, it's a terrible, awful, corrupt simulation of a newspaper. And the front page above the fold is Biden cancels $1.2 billion in loans. All right? And we've got video of him, audio of him saying, the Supreme Court said I couldn't do it, but I did it anyway. Because the rule of law does not apply to them. They don't believe in the rule of law. They believe in raw power and the abuse of the raw power that they have acquired. Biden cancels yet another $1.2 billion in loans. And they've got this big lie that he's sitting up all night and typing emails to, hundreds of thousands of people that are going to be paid off. I guess it's more than 150,000 people, splitting up $1.2 billion. And he's telling them, vote for me. Here's money in your pocket. Now vote for me. This makes Chicago look like honest politics. This guy is so corrupt, and our news media praises it because they're filthy, corrupt frauds. Danielle Douglas Gabrielle. Danielle Gabrielle? That's a silly. And Toulouse. Alan Punia. Sure, something like that. And they typed it up for the Democrat Party on the front page of the Washington Post. And Joe Biden, the Supreme Court said, well, you can't just cancel student loans and buy votes with money not appropriated through Congress, billions of dollars. And he said, screw that. I'll arrest you too. The FBI will bust down your door in a pre-dawn raid with CNN cameras outside. Also, the Post is very upset. Above the fold front page, Trump team sees camps for deported. You mean like FDR throwing all the Japanese American citizens into concentration camps in World War II before the Democrats dropped 2 atomic bombs on them? Just, let's keep the Democrat Party's history straight here. Mass roundups planned in a militarized border operation in second term. I got an idea, Democrats. Stop shooting people. How about that? So a couple of news stories that I want to share with you today. Just a couple. The border, Chicago, people speaking up there. Riley Gaines being violently attacked by mobs and what the Democrats are not doing about it. The anti-Semitic Democratic Party uninviting a famous bicyclist, a woman cyclist, because she's a Jew, and they don't have any of that anymore. We are at 888-630-9625. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. All right. Great minute then. Joe Biden said some really dumb stuff, and it was, fundraising. It's what they do. Can you imagine giving $250,000 to Joe Biden? And it's $500,000 if you bring your best girl or your best guy. I don't want to, a lot of wealthy women in California too, but never mind that. And he's talking about how the Republican Party is worse than the Democratic Party used to be. And he's calling everybody racists and communists. And then he looses a South American gang in your neighborhood. You know why? Because he's a South America first guy. He's, we're America first. We think that we should put America first in so many matters, so many regards. But the Democrat Party is South America first. Make America South America is their mantra. And wait till you hear some of the audio that I have for you today. The mayor of El Cajon, California, and Senator Tuberville, who had a nice meal with the Mexican ambassador. And what the Mexican ambassador told us, the news media will bury it in a shallow grave and never report it, but I will share it with you here because you want to know what's coming and what the Democrats are lying about today. The Democrats are actually running for office based on their record and what they're doing to us right now. The gangs and the open borders and the fentanyl and the cartels and Chicago and New York being overrun. Imagine if we had an aggressive news media that pointed these things out. That'd make everything different, wouldn't it? Before we get into some of this remarkable news today, let's go to the telephones, Michael. We are, of course, at 888-630-9625. Let's go to Sid, calling from Los Angeles, California. El Cid, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Good morning, Chris. Well, I was wondering, maybe you could help me understand the actions of prosecutor David Weiss. He's the guy who brought this charge against the so-called Russian informant and is putting him for lying. Uh-huh. At the same time, when he was handling Hunter Biden's case, he didn't want to bring charges. It was basically forced by the court to bring charges. So I'm just trying to understand why he could act so quickly on this Russian informant. And with Hunter Biden, he took his time, let the statute of limitations go and everything. So I don't understand this discrepancy in his behavior. Maybe you can help me.
Well, it's not unreasonable that you'd have trouble understanding what might appear to be inconsistencies or incongruities in U.S. Attorney David Weiss's performance and carving out a sweetheart deal for Hunter Biden and then arresting someone who was for well over a decade, a trusted FBI confidential informant being paid hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars for his vitally important and reliable information. Because it might, and then they arrested him at Harry Reid International Airport in Las Vegas, Nevada, days ago, and they put him in handcuffs and they dragged him in, and they're threatening him with decades in prison because he told the FBI that his sources in Ukraine informed him, and he passed along dutifully to the FBI, that Joe Biden had been given $5 million and Hunter Biden had been given $5 million. And the thing is, Sid, that may seem inconsistent or incongruous, when in reality, I think it's not at all, because not charging Hunter Biden serves the interests of the Democrat Party and the Biden family, and arresting the confidential informant from Ukraine also serves the interests of the Democrat Party and the Biden family.
I agree with you. I wonder, can I bring up one other point?
But of course, yeah, but this is perfectly consistent if you understand that our Justice Department has been profoundly corrupted by the left. And David Weiss is not a good guy. He is a shill in a third world kind of communist country sort of way for the Democrat Party. And right now that means the corrupt Biden family. I'm sorry, go ahead, Sid.
Yeah, I'm out here in Los Angeles, and Joe Biden's in town, and I'm trying to understand another thing, why Chaim Saban, an Israeli-American, would be hosting this $250,000 dinner for this guy. This doesn't make sense to me that this Israeli is supporting Joe Biden at this time of what's going on with Hamas. It just makes no sense to me as well.
Yeah, and I can't explain that one, because you're right, it's completely illogical. It's like, hosting a dinner for the Nazi Party because they're anti-Israel, anti-Netanyahu, demanding that Israel stop fighting and stop defeating Hamas, a genocidal army on Israel's flank, while, of course, not calling for a ceasefire in Ukraine. Now, I was talking about this yesterday. I think they had the New York Times is saying 29,000 Palestinians, so-called, have been killed since the barbarous, murderous attack on October 7th, right? And that must be stopped. But 315,000 Russians and almost 200,000 Ukrainians have died in 2 years of war in Ukraine, and nobody's calling for a ceasefire. And I don't know if you were listening yesterday, Sid, but I've come to the conclusion that the reason for that is it doesn't violate their DEI and their critical race theory construct, because critical race theory holds that the Israelis are the white people and the Palestinians are the brown people. Therefore, the Israelis, the white people, are the bad people. Never mind that they're not the terrorist attack, and they didn't launch this war. They didn't kidnap people and hold hostages. They're not still holding hostages. But critical race theory dictates that you be on the side of the terrorists, whereas between Ukraine and Russia, critical race theory doesn't come into play. So they're just fine fueling the military-industrial complex, which then fuels Democrat re-election campaigns. We're living in a very corrupt country, Sid, don't you think?
No, I agree with you totally. That you and I have talked before that what's going on is just unfathomable. And
we've been at sea together, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
Yes, we have.
I just got back from Africa. I follow in your footsteps.
You just got back from where? From Africa?
From Antarctica.
Oh, did you really? No kidding. Outstanding.
Yes,
wow, that is great.
I managed to get ashore 4 times. So
that's very, very good. You sailed out of Ushuaia and Tierra del Fuego?
No, we sailed out of Puerto Williams in Chile.
Oh, okay. Very cool. Well, good for you. Good for you, Sid. Thank you for the call. So I'm not going to see you this summer on our sea cruise?
No, I have conflicts with a family event that we have.
Yeah, okay. Well, good. Family matters. And besides, your seafaring budget might have been expended on the trip to Antarctica, too. That's
It was worth it, I thought. Anyway.
That's great.
I really appreciate the show and listening to I wake up in the morning here in Los Angeles. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Sid. Thanks a lot. Antarctica, isn't that great? My best girl and I, we went to Antarctica last year, not last month, but last January, and that's a trip worth making. And Sid is raising important questions that all Americans should be raising, but more importantly, that our news media should be raising. And they aren't. Why aren't they? Well, because so many of them are personally corrupt people, and they're not journalists at all. They just want to hang out with Democrats, get in the hot tub, and have a circle fest. That's pretty much it. Special counsel asks judge to send indicted ex-informant in Hunter Biden case back to jail. Got to send him back to jail. That's last night on CNN. Got to go back to jail. And here's the guy, picture of him, and he's got black hoods over his head and his face because he's terrified of the United States government, even though he's been in the employ of the FBI for well over a decade. I think it's 14 years. Special counsel David Weiss, who gave Hunter Biden and the Biden family a sweetheart deal when it comes to all of Hunter Biden's crimes, gun crimes, lying on federal forms, the crack, the this, the that, the bribes, never mind. It's good to be a Democrat, isn't it? Because we live in a very corrupt country, I'm sorry to have to report. Special counsel David Weiss asked a California judge on Wednesday to send indicted ex-FBI informant Alexander Smirnov, Smirnov like the vodka, back to jail while he awaits trial. Let's put Hunter Biden in jail while he awaits trial. What do you think? We should probably do that. Alexander Smirnov, the FBI informant. And then they got tired of him. They hired Stoloshanaya. Now their new informant is Alexander Stoloshanaya. A magistrate judge in Las Vegas, Nevada, released Smirnov on Tuesday, finding that even though Smirnov posed a flight risk, he could be released under certain conditions. Those conditions include GPS monitoring, confiscating his 2 passports, and ordering him to remain in Nevada, where he currently lives. Currently lives in Nevada. They want to throw him in jail without bail because he's an enemy of the state. And when I say the state, I mean the Biden family and the Democrat Party. If you're a friend of the Biden family or a member of the Biden family, then you're free to go. Then there's no problem. There's no threat that you'll be thrown in jail without bail because the Democrats. Know what I'm saying? We've got a lot to get to on a lot of fronts today, and not the least of which is just the general corruption in the United States government, and also we're keeping an eye on Biden's dog commander that has bit at least 24 Secret Service personnel and is still bouncing around free because, Democrats versus the police. It's an amazing thing. It certainly is. So we got that. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, amazing. Just an amazing clown that she is. Our government, our news media, what's the difference? It's the merger of the Democrat Party and the media industrial complex that has been ongoing for quite some time. Just amazing stuff. Yeah, and they want to put this guy in jail. He became the center of a Washington scandal, and the Democrats want him locked up. But he was a trusted FBI informant. And about a year ago, I think it was, he was part of the investigation on Capitol Hill. And the Democrats and the media were very upset because they're afraid that Republicans might reveal his identity. Now, they're dragging him in front of news cameras and threatening to put him in jail for decades and demanding that he be held without bond and seizing his passports, plural. Some people have multiple, dual citizenship and things like that. I got to tell you, just remarkable stuff. Also in Russia, where Vladimir Putin is a communist. Well, it was on my show on Newsmax night before last. There's a liberal college professor, part of the panel, Jason Nichols. And we're talking about Putin, and I called him a communist, and he insisted that Putin is not a communist. How could Putin be a communist? They have capitalism in Russia. Ah, I see. The career KGB colonel who wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union because the collapse of the Soviet Union, he says, is the greatest tragedy of the 20th century. Just don't call him a communist. Call the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, a communist. Call Donald Trump a communist. But don't call Vladimir Putin a communist. The Democrat Party is mentally ill, severely mentally ill. But Putin has taken another American hostage. And now there are, I think, at least 3 American hostages in Putin's Russia because he's a communist, even though the New York Times called him a conservative. Ballerina Ksenia Karolina, detained in Russia on treason charge. Treason. Now, she is a Russian American who is she's been living in the United States for a long time. She's an American citizen and a dual citizen with Russia. And last year, she apparently raised $52 for Ukrainian relief. And Vladimir Putin has called that treason, which is what the Democrats do around here now. They accuse everybody of treason and of being communist, like Joe McCarthy and all that crazy stuff. You know, what they call the Red Scare. You know, it wasn't a scare. The Reds were killing tens of millions of people at the time. And if in the 1950s you were a communist in the United States, you deserved to be deported to wherever you wanted to go. The communists were no casual matter in the 20th century, and quite honestly, they're not a casual matter now either. Extraordinary. So we've got to update you on a lot of this stuff. We have the Wall Street Journal reporter being held by Putin in jail for nothing. They just gin up charges, and then they throw you in jail. It sounds an awful lot like what the Democrats are doing now in the United States, because you got to remember the Democratic Party isn't. All right, before we get into all of that, let's take another phone call, Michael. Let's go to Angela, calling from Montclair, Virginia. Angela, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Yeah, good morning, Chris. Thank you so much for taking my call. You know, I have here the headlines from CNN on January the 20th, 2022, when Biden was giving his year in review, or giving a press conference after he had been in office for a year. And then all of the media stopped, and it says here that Ukraine was shocked and stunned, Biden giving green light to Putin. And it says here that Iranian officials tell CNN Matthew Chance that they were shocked that Biden gave Putin the green light to invade Ukraine. And this is what Ukraine was thinking. This was all over the media on that day. Now it's forgotten. And also, it seems like the left, because they're so deranged when it comes to Trump, they superimpose Trump onto Putin so that they could get their deranged people to support the war, them supporting Ukraine, when it has nothing to do with the United States at all, nothing. And so it leads me to believe, because, now look, Chris, when they're not telling us the truth, then we start thinking why. And that's how conspiracy theories begin, because, one, we're not being told the truth about everything, when we can see something's not right. So I'm thinking that Ukraine has to be blackmailing Biden and his entire administration, and that's the reason why they're so scared and crazy about making sure they keep the aid going to Ukraine. It has Ukraine and Russia has nothing to do with the United States at all. Why are we sending all that money there? And so, again, that's how conspiracy theories start. So my theory is they're blackmailing Biden and his administration. That's why they won't call for a ceasefire. They superimpose the image of Trump onto Putin so that their crazy Trump deranged people will support the war in our giving money to the effort in Ukraine. I mean, what else makes sense? I mean, in my mind, that makes sense. So,
well, it is hard to make sense of this mad world in which we're living. There's no doubt about it. Joe Biden being president, start with that. Hunter Biden and all the crimes and getting away with it. James Biden, the millions of dollars from Russia, from Ukraine, from China, from Romania, from one of the stands, as a Kyrgyzstan or one of them. That, by the way, people from the stands are spilling across our southern border now as well. But never mind that. Yeah, and one national security expert said that President Biden gave Russian President Vladimir Putin a green light to enter Ukraine. I just pulled up the story. Angela, thank you very kindly. And we've got a lot more about Biden and our increasingly silly country coming up. We're at 888-630-9625. Yeah, now the fluffers at CNN with the headline, and it's that MJ Lee again, communist. Biden considering new executive action to restrict asylum at the border, comma, sources say. They would never do anything officially. Everything's anonymous. Why wouldn't they just come out and tell you what they want? Why would they leak it and be anonymous? And didn't Barack Obama put people in prison for leaking anonymous information? Oh, yes, he did. Use the FBI to hunt down people leaking to the press, which goes on all day, every day. That's how the press works, roughly 100% of the time. The White House is considering executive action to restrict migrants' quote, ability to seek asylum in the U.S.-Mexico border if they crossed illegally, a maneuver reminiscent of controversial action from the Donald Trump era, and is sure to invite fierce backlash from immigration advocates and progressives, that is to say, left-wing radicals and extremists in the Democrat Party, who want America to be unrecognizable as a cohesive and coherent country. So what is that? You're going to wait, it's Trump. These are Trump policies. All right, Democrats, time to get into the streets and start looting. Find a CVS or a Walgreens or something.